Hello, everyone. This is C.B Smallwood, and welcome to Mental Junk Food, where we talk about all things comics, sci-fi, horror, fantasy, pop culture, and everything in between. And today, we're going to be talking about Marvel Editor-in-Chief C.B Cebulski, the other C.B. I'm the original. Okay, he's the clone. C.B Cebulski. he he basically had some not too complimentary things to say about artists working for Marvel and DC these days. And we'll get into that in just a second. First of all, I always like to plug and give credit to my sources because they do a lot of the footwork for me. And today's source is bleedingcool.com. So if you want to cut out the middleman and read the article in full, I encourage you to do that. And for those of you are sticking with me to the bitter end, I really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get into it. C.B Cebulski calls out new Marvel writers on Twitter for job insecurity. And Drew Terra goes on to write, because it's not like he has any better venue to offer this sort of criticism or anything. Marvel editor-in-chief C.B Cebulski took to Twitter on Saturday to call out a lot of new writers for trying to cram in too much story in their comics due to not knowing how long it will last. So let's read C.B Cebulski's tweet that's caused a little bit of controversy. I find a lot of new writers continue to do this today. They get a gig at Marvel or DC and finally get to play with their childhood heroes and don't know how long it will last. So try to squeeze in every story they've had in their head in multiple subplots over a couple of issues. And it appears that CB wrote this in response to something that Kurt Busiek wrote. And for those of you that watch my videos, I'm pretty well documented that I can't pronounce anyone's name. Looking over my early Avengers run, I think the biggest flaw was that I tried to do too much at once, like a kid at the buffet loading his plate with too many goodies. George, and I think he's referring to George Perez, made it easy to do because he was so good at cramming stuff into a page and still made it look great. And here we see an image of George Perez's take on the Avengers, a run that he did with Kurt that was pretty good, but short-lived. So the meat of this article, this meat of this story, is the comments that people's been writing him. And before I get to those tweets, I just want to mention that after I get done reading them, that I'm going to offer my perspective. So stick around for that. Will Penner wrote, "It's almost like people cancel books way too early, and they don't get the opportunity to tell their stories or something." I like that. You know, it's funny, it's sad, it's tragic, it's all the above. James Haunts the Moors writes, I mean, even discounting constant relaunch and crossover interruption, I do drop comics because of crossovers and they kill runs reread value. I actually prefer fast, dense comics with multiple interwoven plot lines. Colin Space Twinks writes, as the editor-in-chief, whose fault is it that they have little to no idea how long they'll get to write a comic, but have a rough guess that they might not even get 10 issues? Like, it's just on the heels of Sina Grace talking about you dumb bunnies, holding him on a tight leash for getting Iceman book more publicity, and rightly predicting that it'd sell great in trade. The first volume was canceled before the first trade came out. And yeah, the rest of this, it's pretty much the same, but in different ways, more insults than anything. So let me offer my perspective, and I've actually recorded this video like several times because I kind of went off in a lot of weird places. So forgive me if I do so in this video. Not my intent. So C.B Cebulski is the editor-in-chief, and the buck does stop with him. He's supposed to be the guy, in theory anyway, that says, hey, we're not going to relaunch stuff. We will relaunch stuff. We do this. We do that. This is the creative direction that we're going in. He's supposed to be that guy. All the editors, everybody reports to him. Buck stops with him. So if he has writers that are trying to cram in too much stuff because they don't know how long it will last. And he even admits this, that, that they don't know how long it will last. Here, let me highlight that. That they don't know how long it will last, how long the run of the book will last. That they try to squeeze in every story that they've had in their heads over a couple of issues. So CB's aware of this, but instead of trying to find a way to fix the problem, he's taking to Twitter to complain about it, or not complain about it, maybe just making an observation. But see, here's the thing with a great editor-in-chief, in my opinion. A great editor-in-chief is someone that not only makes sure that the ship's running smoothly, but part of making sure that the ship runs smoothly is that they communicate what are the standards and what is the expectations to the writers and artists and editors that work under the editor-in-chief. They also lay out the agenda and the direction of where the company is going for that month, for that year, and for that decade. They got to have a plan for everything, and they got to make sure that that plan is understood and make sure that the plan is properly implemented. I mean, the editor-in-chief has a big responsibility. And some of the best editor-in-chiefs actually work with their artists and writers to help them to be the best artists and writers that they can be, and to push them to be the best. And so, a lot of Marvel books that's been put out in the last decade have been getting more criticism than any time than before. Now, some people can say it's because of the internet. A lot more people have access to internet, and so you get a lot of narcissistic people making comments. That's true. A lot of narcissistic people love the internet, but really, in reality, you have to look at the sales as the go-to thing to separate a couple of narcissistic people being very loud in their comments online to the harsh reality that is the sales figures of Marvel Comics. Now, some people can say that Marvel Comics is doing great because they make X amount of dollars every year in their comics, but that's only because I dare say that every time they start to get low sales on their books, they jack the price up on them. And why do they jack the price up on their books every year or every other year? It's because that way they can go to their shareholders and say that these books are still selling, even though they have fewer readers than what they did just a year prior. Marvel Comics and the people that's running it, and probably Mickey Mouse, have put in a lot of decisions and had a lot of dumb ideas on what makes a company profitable in the long term. They're so stuck and so fixated on short-term profits that they're actually killing their company, their publishing company, in the long run. And how are they doing that? With constant reboots, unprofessionalism on the part of some of the creators and the editors on how they conduct themselves online, in some cases in public. Constant, like I said, constant reboots, relaunches, and substandard quality as compared to what came out in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early millennium. Now, there are some great books being put out by Marvel right now, but there's some not so great books being put out right now. And at the end of the day, it's your editor-in-chief. It is, his responsibility, his or her responsibility to lay down the direction of where things are going to go and make sure that there's quality people that's put into place to implement that direction. And also it's also the editor-in-chief's responsibility to make sure that they have a good direction to go in the first place. So on one hand, you got possibly some great creative teams that are working on a title and it's doing reasonably well, and readers are still getting accustomed to it, and all of a sudden they're finding out that it's going to be canceled in 3 or 4 issues, And so they're having to cram in everything to so that way at least it makes somewhat sense of where they was going with it in the first place. On the other hand, there are other artist and writer creative teams that are writing books that are not heroic, that are not cosmic in scale, but instead very mundane and bland, ordinary take on superheroes that are so uninspiring that obviously the sales tank, and so they get their books canceled. So there's that aspect of it too. I mean, nobody wants to sit and read a book, hypothetically. Let's just have a make believe scenario where Captain America has 10 cats and he just sits on the sofa all day, and his powerful wife, who looks way more muscular than him, berates him and belittles him and tells him to work 10 jobs and to shape up, ship out. And all he does is eat bonbons and yogurt and ice cream all day and watch soap operas, and has this constant inner monologue about his feelings, how he feels bad about this and that, and rarely fights anything, that means anything to anyone. Nobody wants to read that book. I mean, like, it might be all right if it was one book, I mean, I'm sure there's readers for that, But what made Marvel Marvel is what they were putting out from the '60s all the way up to the early millennium. There was a method. There was a Marvel method created by the likes of Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, and a lot of other people that embellished and added to that throughout the decades. And that formula was a proven one. You don't believe me? Look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has made billions and billions of dollars. And as I speak, unless it's changed, Avengers was on its way to beating Avatar as the number one grossing film of all time. So it's not like the Marvel method is flawed or broken, because it is because of the Marvel method, not the Marvel method, but because of the way that the type of stories and the way that they were told, and the character development, the shared universe, and all these things, and the continuity. It's because of all that is the reason that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing as good as it is. That is the reason, you know. So let's try to bring things back full circle, and let me end this video here in a little bit before I start getting on some weird tangents. The buck does stop with Mr. C.B Cebulski. If for some reason Disney is making a lot of these decisions about canceling this book or that book, or whatever, and C.B Cebulski is nothing more than a editor-in-chief figurehead, then quit having a figurehead. Because you're putting somebody in a bad position, in a no-win position. If people at Disney are calling the shots of what happens on day-to-day Marvel operations, and a lot of the big decisions about cancellations and reboots, all new number ones over and over again, and gimmicky covers, if Disney's the one that's making those decisions, then they need to have whoever's making those decisions and call that person the editor-in-chief. But now, if it's C.B Cebulski making these decisions, then he needs to own up to it, reverse course, and fix it, in my opinion. My not so humble opinion. But to be fair to C.B Cebulski, the clone and not the original CB, to be fair to him, a lot of this stuff had been happening for a decade, so long before, he took the job as editor-in-chief. But he is editor-in-chief. He's been there long enough now to where a lot of this stuff needs to be, should have been fixed, and it's not. So that's just my opinion. I mean, I have a lot more to say about it, but like I said before, I went on a lot of weird tangents in the last couple of videos, so I think it's best just to kind of end it there. Please let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think? Do you think C.B Cebulski is right about what he says about calling out these writers that work for Marvel and DC these days? Or do you disagree with that? Or do you think that he's right about what he says, but it's people like him that are the source of the problem? Or do you think it's, X, Y, or Z? Do you agree or disagree with anything that I said? Let me know in the comment section down below. And please remember to give this video a like, a comment, a share, and please subscribe. I love it when I get new subscribers. My channel feels so lonely without any new subscribers. I'd at least like to get to 400 subscribers, so if you can humor me with that, I appreciate it. As always, this is C.B Smallwood, and I will see you in the next video. Beep.